your customers more efficient. Like, at the end of the day, the promise of software is some level of efficiency or benefit for customers. And the moment you like jump over a fence to protect revenue, to make your customers less efficient or stop them becoming more efficient, you've like really got your whole world upside down as like a technology vendor.
Yeah.
Right? So like,
you gotta look in the mirror at that point.
Yeah, totally. It's like, are we actually having this conversation? Yes. Welcome back to the Offsite Podcast, episode 96. We're 4 away from the big 100. Get excited, set the date in your calendar. I don't know when it'll be, but at some point.
If only we knew the date, yeah.
Yeah, if only we knew the date. I'm Jason Lancini. I'm joined once again by co-host Carlos Cavallo. And today we are talking about best practices for managing the scheduling and coordination of design in construction projects. A rabbit hole if I've ever seen one. Then we're going to be totally shocked and blown away at the license terms that Oracle seem to have been implementing, where it's unclear about whether they own or you own your data as a customer of something like P6, allegedly. And finally, we're going to dive into the bowels of LinkedIn. Yeah,
I would say safe now.
The allegedly is important. Finally, we're going to dive into the bowels of LinkedIn and look at a post that raises the question about, on a project, who should be the driver of technology? Should it be the contractor, the client, or say the supply chain or consultants? But before we do that, Carlos, how are you?
I'm good. I was enjoying reading one of the docs that our producer shared.
That's producer Olu.
Producer Olu, our fabulous producer. In China.
I don't know that he would have gone with fabulous as the word, but tremendous.
That's sticky now. 160 kilometer stretch of highway between Beijing, Hong Kong, and Macau has been completely built using autonomous vehicles from beginning to end.
It definitely wasn't. It definitely wasn't.
Fake news. Move on. Fake news.
There's no way. They've definitely done the easy bits automatic. So there's like you can imagine like a paver on cruise control with kind of like lane guidance kind of thing. And I think there was a person somewhat involved in that thing. And then you can imagine following that a fleet of 6 rollers. And the rollers are kind of like covering the 3.5 lanes or whatever it might be. So they're kind of like in this staggered formation. And they're appearing to drive themselves. I'd love to see what the QA was on this thing, because I just can't imagine that they're also actually doing the QA. Like, I could imagine they drive themselves. I could imagine that they like keep a formation and cover the whole road. But there's more that a roller driver does than just like press forward and go in a straight line.
Yeah, Olu, if you could reach out and get some QA documentation, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Cool. All right. That wasn't a side quest that we didn't mean to go down at all. Let's get into it. All right. So design in construction and the management of design. I think if you were to survey 100 large design and construct projects and said what was causing your project to be delayed, the answer would be 12 out of 10 times design. And if you dive under the hood, what typically you would see on most projects is that all the design looks like it's on track until none of it's on track, and you get to like 80%, 90% complete, and the date blows out. It's kind of like that saying where like the first 90% takes 90% of the time and the last 10% takes the other 90% of the time. You obviously, and we've obviously spent a lot of time working with and talking to projects that have this exact problem. We've seen lots of different ways that design gets managed. You know, it's historically or typically the realm of package tracking spreadsheets, very, very long meetings where we're going package by package through and kind of guessing dates. Then a week later, finding out that something on some other package meant that all of our resources went to that other package and all of our other dates are wrong. And it's also the realm of if we are slipping, what we should do is break the design into more and more smaller packages. So there's kind of like keep breaking down the things that need to be gated or design assured. So there's like some common patterns. And once it starts, at least in my experience, once you start breaking things into smaller and smaller packages, you are multiplying the amount of design assurance processes that you need to go through, and complexity just starts to like explode. It's kind of like a trap. It can feel like you make one part of the project go faster, and in the end, you're making the whole project go slower. The question to lead to is, how do you stop that from happening? What are the like patterns, or what are the cadences, or what are the responsibilities that projects that do a good job at trying to manage what is a very hard to manage part of a project, what do they exhibit? I don't know if you wanted to pick up from there, Carlos, given you've got a lot of experience with working with design teams.
There's quite a consistent, or I guess common, like, sort of state of play that we experience when we meet design teams. And most of them have a situation that they're in that contract schedules from a design perspective are super high level. Like, we think of construction as being quite high level, but we're talking like weeks and months long activities.
Yeah.
So we have this very, very high level schedule, which like you can sort of empathize with, because at the time of building that schedule, like you don't know the raft of drawings and everything that has to be done. So you've got this very high level schedule.
And that high level schedule, usually when it's developed, is like every design development duration is the same duration. Every, you know,
it's like a template. Copy and paste. So that's what we have in P6. And some projects, don't get me wrong, they spend a lot of time to break that down into more detail, but generally you're not seeing anything less than 2 weeks as a duration. And then you've got a design team. So the design manager is probably working with the planner to keep that as updated as possible. You've got design teams that resort to Excel and build these trackers because they're trying to give an idea of where they are. But the immediate problem there is there's no logic between everyone's tasks across the full team. And these are normally sort of discipline leads or design coordinators trying to keep track of everything that they're doing. The only way we know that we've got this schedule blowout or sequence issues when you update the contract schedule at the end of the month, and there's this mismatch of detail, there's no logic, and it's very hard to stay on top of it. Historically, there's not really been a way to facilitate that in a meaningful way without asking design teams to use complicated planning tools.
Yeah. If I could double click on that just very briefly, like you talked about you had no logic. So if we think about the construction parallel, why do we even have logic in our plan? Usually there's like, okay, something has to be done before the slab has to be poured before you can put the walls on top of the slab, sort of thing. So there's like what would be called hard logic. Sometimes like sequencing of work as well might not be exactly hard logic, but it could be that resources are going to go through a certain path. It's my observation that design has very little hard logic in it, in terms of you could almost start all design immediately. You know, there's obviously like you might need to do a design report before you do detailed design. So there's like this mini sequence thing that happens, but there's usually no like meta sequence that must happen. Is it logic and those sequences that cause those tracking sheets to be inaccurate for them, or is it some other bottleneck or constraint that, you know, next week when we turn up and look at the tracker and everything's delayed, there's something else going on? So is it a lack of like planning with logic, or is there some other constraint that's kind of driving delay?
I think there's a lot of all of it. So you could just imagine, like, if I'm to oversimplify an issue, you could be working in part of the team that is trying to get a section of the design construction ready, and someone originally planned that to happen after the piece of work that I was working on. You get that construction ready, and then I do something that you thought was already done, which changes the design that's in the construction ready part that you've done. And that's like screwing around with the status of all of these drawings, which you need to for construction, so the construction team can use. So there's this prioritization.
There's like this ricocheting of consequences.
Yeah, and then you can imagine all this back and forth between teams. So, and then there's also the classic construction team saying, we need something done. And if you've got discipline leads working in silos, they're obviously trying to blast through everything that they want to deliver, but without logic and sequence, it's really hard to prioritize that in a meaningful way, not just to deliver it, but to communicate to the team when it's going to be done and everything that comes with it. Yeah, it's tweaking something could change a lot of things.
Yes.
So yeah, you can see why it becomes a real difficult situation to manage when you're prioritizing.
Yeah, it's like the solution to that means you probably need, actually, my comment about like there isn't a lot of hard logic or fixed sequence, it probably points to the need for a like very well thought through sequence where you kind of I need this thing to be kind of locked or semi-locked before I move to this thing. Yeah. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and like knowing what to accelerate if you need to accelerate something that's in a month. Like, okay, so what's everything else that has to be done? Because we can't just start that now because there might be a sequence of events that needs to be hit. So the process that they're running is kind of similar to construction, but a more simple level of detail. And what teams want is to have that sequence of activities and that base plan from the contract schedule, but to distribute that ownership out to these disciplines so they can manage their own time, but within the guardrails of the sequence that's been determined by the planning team, the design managers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the like problem space they get into. And then from running an actual sort of short-term planning process, and most design teams do have a short-term planning process. It's something that they might review every 2 or 4 weeks, and it's normally in Excel, and they're looking a few weeks ahead. But by getting this sort of constant feed of more live information on at least a weekly basis, it allows them to be a bit more agile. It allows them to spot these issues before you get to the end of the month and you've lost 2 months in 1 month, which is the common situation that we see teams in. And then, on top of that, actually understanding why we're delayed and understanding which parties are responsible. A lot of these design teams are not just joint ventures, but they use a lot of specialist design houses that are contributing to these schedules. So it's a big coordination piece in itself. It's not just 5 guys in an office updating drawings that some people might assume is the case.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, the thing that I've observed in managing design scope is like the problem kind of stems from when you look at each package or each component in isolation and you think about the steps that need to get done for that to be finished. It's very easy to go, yes, that could be done in 2 weeks. How hard is it to finish off the design report and get some design drawings issued for the staircase? Well, it's probably not that, someone sitting there looking at the tracker goes, it's not very hard. But usually what drives the production of work and the performance is that at the end of the day, every one of those little assumptions of like, this could take 2 weeks or this could take 4 weeks is resulting in some person sat there with the list of things that they've got to get done in the week. And that person can only get so much of it done. So it's usually like a resource constraint on actual production of work. And that's where usually that like tracking sheet where you're kind of just thinking about it package by package, and someone who's attending this meeting while most of the designers are back in the office doing their job, someone's attending this meeting, thinking about all of the packages and getting pressure from a contractor or a client. When can we have this package? And they're just doing the old thumb suck. Yeah, that's probably 3 weeks. But if you do like 5 of those, that will be 3 weeks or that will be 5 weeks. It's Bob in the 3D modeling team that's got now like 20 packages to do in the week.
Yeah, exactly. And they are thinking about resource. So you might have like one structural engineer in the team, for example, and then if you're resource loading tasks and saying, I need this person's time, and they go, right, in 4 weeks' time, we need 5 Bobs. That's not going to happen. And then you go back to prioritization again and which one should go first. And it's a big coordination piece.
Simple plans. Like, if we take for a moment, just thinking through the lens of AFEX, for example, the typical pattern is something like a top-down start from what the master schedule says in terms of breaking down our packages. Then we're trying to break down the work that we've got to do into actual steps so that we're not just thumb-sucking 3 weeks for this thing to be done.
So the 3 weeks normally gets broken down to a bunch of deliverables, and those deliverables would be things like
stages,
like drawing updates, model updates, assurance, third-party checks, the steps that you need to do to achieve. And by breaking it down, it's way easier to predict an end date on a bunch of steps than a 4-week-long bar. If you're at day 2, no one knows if you're going to finish on week 28. Day 28. So by breaking it down to
week 28.
So yeah, that granularity is needed for not just
and
clarity,
the granularity probably also lets you then put the resource or the specialist designer, and you can see suddenly like we've got third-party assurance from these people with 20 packages this week. That's not going to happen. So you can start to see and spot the resource bottlenecks.
And then also tracking delays against information from the client. Because design get all the shit, but they're still waiting on information too. So yeah,
that's really funny because yesterday I met with a mega project in North America, and they're in design phase, and they're asking about the design use case, and so I quickly showed in the software, this is the typical sequence that you might have. You might do design development, and then it might go for client review, and then you might update it, and then it might get approved. And they said, well, actually, it's probably going to go back and forth 15 times from there. But you have
delay, second review, delay, third review.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to track that as like as a design management team, and you have to hold everyone to account because they're going to be holding you to account on the dates.
Yeah, and it depends why it fails the review, right? So suddenly you're in a world of, is it your fault, their fault, someone else? Yeah.
There's a whole other book on the review process and the games that get played in there, but we won't open that can. Yeah. No, super interesting. I think design is for most projects that are rightly or wrongly, most projects that are massively delayed in the design and construct world, a large amount of that delay is accrued from the design phase. And probably no fault of the actual design teams or design management teams. Like the challenge given, no one's estimated the durations properly because it's full of unknown unknowns. All right, should we move on?
Let's do it.
The controversy of 2025. So for context here, Oracle, the owners of Primavera P6, have a set of terms of service. And we were hearing more and more complaints from people across the industry that Oracle was allegedly kind of sending this audit team, which I think they call, I can't remember the exact name of the team, but it's like the license inspectorate or something like that. I don't want to. Sorry, it's not called that. And they were going and checking their customers for users in excess of their licensed amount. And what that uncovered is that within Oracle's terms of service, not only does a customer need to have the actual users of the software license, but within the terms, the users or people that view the data, whether it be through third-party services or other API connection, are also deemed as needing to be licensed users. So said another way, and the example that I wrote about the other day, this is the exact example that we hear probably most commonly, is someone is using P6 to manage their schedule. There's a couple of planners managing that schedule for a project, and then they are connecting that to a Power BI dashboard to build some sort of report that they can show to the project management team and probably to the whole project. Some people are putting on a screen in the office, and they're getting a lot of pressure to say, well, everyone in the entire office is technically needing to be a licensed user. Let's just start with what the hell? And then we can go on to why the hell. Maybe we go there.
I can just imagine a project when you have to submit some data to the client and you're like, whoa, have you guys bought licenses? Because you can't view this without, so sorry, we can't submit the schedule. It's like, it feels like Adobe charging you to view a PDF that they've created. Yeah. And it is your data. So they're then charging you to, the whole thing is baffling. It's so siloed in its approach. Let's close this ecosystem of information that helps run a project, unless you pay for it.
It's anti-competition. It's anti-customer, isn't it?
Yeah, and you wonder is it has P6 hit this ceiling of how many licenses it has out there, and now it's how do we generate more revenue? Because if we're not growing, you're dying in software world. So
Yeah.
Are they trying to sort of pull every last pound out of a tool that they're not betting on the future of? We see it as a relationship business, and this is a relationship killer when you send audit teams to see if you're using the data that you own in ways that they're not happy with. It feels like a really odd move, especially as I know that the type of license that they're saying you need to view the data is way cheaper than a P6 license. So they're probably in a weird world thinking, well, we've made it a lot cheaper, so that seems fair. But it's the principle of charging you to view a Power BI dashboard that contains a date from P6 is bizarre.
Yeah. Do you think that the motivate? Well, yeah, we'll switch to why the hell. Do you think that it's driven by is it like an offensive or a defensive move? So to frame the possible options, at least that I'm thinking about, is there's the offensive move, which is we've saturated the market of potential users. We want to try and find ways to grow that. And so, we're trying to capture the use of the data somehow in this licensing world and create this more and more this like walled garden thing that we can pull people into. And the defensive move is like, well, we kind of tried that with some of our cloud tools to make this thing that more and more people could access, and that's really struggled. We can see that there is a world of tools like on the reporting and AI analytics side, on the BI side, on the authoring and updating data side, that threaten to basically leech users over time from us. How do we stop that if we can't make good software? We'll kind of just stick up this big wall around ourselves. Do you think it's like it's primarily an offense or a defensive move?
Like the industry is moving towards this connected environment. Everything you see is around this idea that like tools will connect. You've got an ecosystem of platforms that are producing data and that's shareable, and it's this big collaborative environment. If they're seeing the trend towards that and they back the fact that there still isn't a suitable alternative to P6 in major projects, like it is still everywhere. We don't see anything but P6 on anything large scale. There could be this odd view that it's like, well, why wouldn't we charge for this? Because we are the center of construction. Everything is built in this schedule. They probably think that P6 is the thing that governs everything that happens on site every day to an extent. So it's like it feels offensive and defensive at the same time.
It definitely feels offensive.
Offensive. Yeah.
But yeah, I think like if you imagine you're an executive in the construction division at Oracle, and by the way, this is a company that literally just the other day signed a $30 billion a year order from OpenAI. So the construction division is probably like somewhere near the bottom of importance to the business. But if you're an executive in that division, they've been making consistent investment in, Primavera Cloud and these other tools, and they've, trying to grow. And on the flip side, if you're seeing any form of leaching or churning or seat shrinkage across a customer base, surest way to like probably lose your job is to have that. And then you start going, how do I, we'll have to bleep that swear word out, but how do I combat that? Nothing worse than like trying to grow the thing while it's degrading or churning underneath.
You become desperate.
It feels like it's a much more logical thing that it's defensive than it is offensive.
And offensive is like double down on what people want to make the tool more useful.
Offensive would be kind of like, let's say like an Apple ecosystem world. Like I plan to ship the world's best BI thing in this thing, and if I bake into my contract that it's like cheaper to use our tool, that then I kind of build this like walled garden that I can keep building inside of.
Yeah, like keep the data open, but build a reporting tool that's so good that people will buy it, and then make your revenue. That's the well thought out way of improving.
Yeah, so for me, the way that makes the most logical sense is that they're trying to stem the tide of I don't think they have customers like broadly leaving them, because like you said, there's no real alternative. But I believe fully the story that we've talked about before and with the guys at Nose and Links and stuff, where I could see how they would definitely see a project previously having 5 seats now has 3 seats. or something like that, you know?
Yeah. I can imagine this whole thing started from a worry that tools will be developed with a purpose to update the contract schedule. So on
Correct.
a £20 billion job, you just need one license and you can do
Correct.
everything outside of that.
Yeah.
And then someone's just broadened that definition. And then maybe after that's been done, you've got sales teams going,
even if that's the concern, like, which is, I think you're 100% on the money. I think they were worried that someone would build a tool to update the master schedule, which people have. There's lots of them out there where you can go and put in progress updates on things and it will go and update the schedule. Even if that was their concern, do you think that that's like right, that they should even do that?
If that is your worry, just don't allow it as a tool. Like, just restrict the ability to update the tool if that is like your primary concern.
I just can't think of too many companies and pieces of software that are both very large, successful, and have any sort of net promoter score where people like the thing, where the way that they operate is actively avoiding or limiting end user success or benefit or efficiency in order to protect the fact that maybe someone else can build a better interface for updating the schedule than they can.
Yeah.
Take like a Salesforce, who have recently been accused of similar terms in their contracts which stop their customers training AI models on their Salesforce data, which is somewhat akin to this. Even Salesforce, there's a whole ecosystem of tools that are built on top of Salesforce APIs to allow people to go and update records and stuff. That's like, it seems crazy to block people's access to their own data.
But if let's say we go X number of years forward and the Sizewells of the world have one P6 license, like, that tool's over. They won't even own and maintain a tool where there's that few licenses out there. So maybe they see it as like a protective measure to ensure the future of a tool that's making them a lot of money by, and this is specifically the updating thing, not like the dashboards and everything else.
One, like, build or buy a tool that does the updating thing well and sell that.
Yeah.
Like build it or buy one, because there's like tons of them. They're probably not that expensive, and sell that and keep the ecosystem open and keep a competitive thing so that you can make your customers more efficient. Like, at the end of the day, the promise of software is some level of efficiency or benefit for customers. And the moment you like jump over a fence to protect revenue to make your customers less efficient or stop them becoming more efficient, you've like really got your whole world upside down as like a technology vendor.
Yeah.
Right? So like,
you gotta look in the mirror at that point.
Yeah, totally. It's like, are we actually having this conversation? Yes. So yeah, I think they have to build or buy a tool to do that.
But also going back to data ownership,
or change their pricing model. Like, if they're going to provide a database, you can price your database solution not per license. Like, they're selling effectively like a database. They've kind of got this SaaS software, not SaaS software, desktop software that is an interface on top of a database, and they're pricing that database through the lens of the seat or the user using the software.
Yeah.
So I think they might need to just also rethink that whole pricing model.
And then the other side of this is, if it is your data, even if it's been updated, the set of dates that you originally owned, you use P6 to update a schedule and you pull that data out, it's still your data. It doesn't become theirs because they've manipulated that data.
No, same with Salesforce. I go and put my contacts and stuff into my CRM like Salesforce. For them to go, well, no, now you can't, train an AI model to make yourself more efficient. Yeah, sure. Training that model or updating the data in P6 is going to result in calls to a database. So price it like a database. If there's two parts to this, which is like front end software and a database, the problem for Oracle is just like, databases are super cheap. They're not.
Yeah. You can't slap a big number because everyone knows.
Well, yeah, I can go to, you can spin up a database for basically free. I think naturally, Oracle has a database and this UI, and the UI is like really struggling. But yeah, the way that I think the pricing model really needs to be detached. Repeating what I said before, the moment you're a technology vendor and you find yourself having a conversation that's like, how can we do anything that blocks the benefit of our customers, them moving forward, is just like a big like have a look in the mirror moment.
Yeah, short-term thinking.
Yep. I know. That's. I don't think they're going to change that. I think those terms have been around for 5 years. Someone mentioned on LinkedIn. So it's not like a thing that has changed recently.
Took them 5 years to pull together an audit team.
That's right. Honestly, that is actually true. That is 100% true. All right, let's briefly dive into the world of LinkedIn. So a post the other day by James Swanston asked the question about who should own the construction technology relationship on a project. Said another way, it's like who should decide what technology is used on a project? Should it be the general contractor? Should it be the supply chain? Should it be the client? Should it be the consultant? And what are the pros and cons of each of those parties driving it? I don't know if you immediately had thoughts off the back.
I think there is a bit of both. So there's the relationship there's the purchasing relationship, and then there's the ongoing support relationship, and they do slightly differ. If we think about decision purchasing and running that process, there could be benefits from both client and contractor. I'm going to ignore supply chain for now because I've got a different view on that. A client on a major scheme, by purchasing software, can obviously enforce consistency across contractors, has buying volume or buying gains, and can run the process at the right time, like before people start, because contractors are a bit more reactive to buying software. So I could see the benefits there, but then there can become a friction, because some contractors deliver a project in a certain way, they use certain tools, and if that differs from the client, how does that work unless they put it into the contract? So I can see benefits from the client running that on a scheme like we spoke about in the previous episode, of lots of tier one contractors working on a super scheme. Whereas the contractor is closer to the problem, probably, depending on the type of software, is ultimately probably going to be the end user. So you want something that's most suitable for the team or group of individuals who will be regularly using the piece of, or the innovation or the tool. There's some benefits from being the most suitable tool, could be the one that's selected by the contractor, but then you haven't got buying gains. You might have different contractors within a client organization using different tools, which makes reporting and oversight difficult. So you could see that kind of decision point across the two being a conflict depending on the type of scheme.
For me, it's like a frustratingly stupid question. And what I mean by that is, I guess you kind of have, if you classify technology or software at least into like systems of record. So this is where the RFI lives, or where the drawing lives, or whatever. And then you've got like systems of collaboration. So it's like how we work together on a design or something like that, where you kind of have to work together in the software. This has a lot of overlap with the Oracle conversation, where like systems of record, it should not be a discussion about which piece of software we're using, because it shouldn't matter. Why
it shouldn't, but it could, because there might be there could be a varied functionality which closes doors on certain aspects.
Almost never though. Like most of the main pieces, like you can, in Autodesk, you can raise a RFI. In Procore, you can raise an RFI. The post talked about like an Autodesk versus Procore, for example, as an example of this selection. It should be that we can set an integration that maps the fields together very, very quickly, and off we go. We can pass one from the other backwards and forwards, except that it's not in the interest of the vendors to have a direct integration, easy to use with a competitive set, because it removes one of the levers to drive standardization of their tool across a contractor or an owner's organization. So I think it's frustrating that you're having this conversation at like a system of record level, because I think the problem if we think about every other industry, every company uses their own piece of software that they choose that makes them most efficient to deliver whatever they're delivering, and that information should get passed to the next person that needs it. I think it's just crazy that the way that the system of record, that a system of record might require that every single person on a project is a user in their system. I think it's a crazy model, because now in construction, every one of the people on the project, the general contractor, the supply chain, the owner, almost every single one of them will be delivering many projects at the same time, which means by definition, they're in this world of like we're having this stupid conversation about, on 6 of my projects, I use this tool, 4, I use this tool, 7. And then by the way, I use this, I use 2 tools, because I'm having to do the one for them and the one for us. I think systems of records protecting their own patch and intentionally not integrating with their competitors is like a crazy problem to still be having. I think systems of collaboration where you're more likely to have this, we both need to be in the same spot in order to do the work together, which, to be clear, some of Procore is that, some of Autodesk is a different story. And it depends probably on who the owner of that workflow is probably the best driver of it.
Yeah. I totally agree on the system of record. Any collaboration piece, it needs to be the organization or the body of people that need to use it closest to the problem and have that day-to-day use, because then you get that disconnect of someone making a decision without that group of people in mind.
Yeah.
Well, most cases are going to be the contractor at that point, I believe. There may be a few from a client organization, like communication
designers,
tools.
Could also be designers. There's collaborative tools in design.
It's hard to think of instances where you want the supply chain to define their own tools, unless it's something that's specific for them to function, and it isn't a requirement of others to be involved in that tool itself. So that makes sense for them to choose themselves.
Yeah. Sorry to blow up the conversation, but it feels like a frustrating conversation to be having. I think we're out of time.
We are indeed. Right. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning into today's show. If you did enjoy the episode, please do think about liking this video or following us on your chosen podcast platform. We really appreciate your support, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye.